It's a great day to paint a snowy cold background. I'm Colette Pitcher. Thanks for joining me today. I have a photograph I took of a beautiful blue jay. That's going to be our inspiration. But just to get started, we're going to paint the background first. People always say, "Oh, I'm scared of the background. I don't know what to do with the background." Well, let's start with it. You don't always have to start with the background, but I kind of like to do it that way. I have a rather large 1-inch flat brush, and I am going to just add some water to the background area. So I'm going to paint up to my bird on the top part only. And we'll let that water soak into this piece of 300-pound rough Arches paper. And since Arches 300-pound is so heavy, it takes just a little bit of time to let the water absorb into that. And that's what we want to do, is let it kind of sink in. And I'll probably wet it again. Wetting the paper is so important. We hurry it often, and you can't do that. So I have painted just plain water, an ice skating rink, if you will, of shininess of the water on there. You probably can't see that, but if I hold it up and you can see the shine of the paper, there's a big area that I've missed right in there. By lifting it up and looking at the shine, it helps you see where you've missed. So I would do that. Lift it up, and we can even roll that water around so that it's not puddly. I'm going to let it absorb. You can even see the paper starting to buckle a little bit. If that bothers you, you could wet the back side and it would remain completely flat. But your reward would also be that it would take forever to dry. So I'm going to mix up, well, that's absorbing. I'm going to mix up a kind of a gray color. So I've got some ultramarine blue here. It's very purpley blue. And into that, I'm going to add some burnt sienna. Notice I put it on this side, and I don't mix the whole puddle at once, but I can kind of mix it up gradually. So I have still burnt sienna, I have blue, and I have a gray in between. And I'm going to add some water. I'm going to clean out my brush. Now that my paper has had some time to absorb, let's take a look at it and see if it's still shiny. There's a puddle up here I don't want to have. So I'm going to run that down, and I'm going to try to make it shiny, not puddly, all the way around. It's looking pretty good. If it had dry spaces, I would add more water at this point. If it had puddles, I would lift it and run the puddles out so that it's evenly wet everywhere. And yeah, I'm talking a lot about it, but yeah, it's that important to have your surface ready for you to go. It looks good. So I am going to dip into my gray color and test it out. That is pretty heavy duty. But if it's too much color, just dipped into some water and I can add some water to it. I'm also using Golden's Core watercolors. They're spelled Q-O-R, and they're very potent, very strong color. So if you're using another brand or student grade, heaven forbid, you won't get these colors. So you will have to use much more paint. So know that going in, if you're not getting the colors as vivid as mine are. Might not be your fault, might be your colors. So also with these colors, it's kind of nifty, they dry the same color they went on with. You might be used to watercolors drying much lighter than you put them on. You apply them and they evaporate with the air, and that's always a disappointment. I'm going with some pretty strong color in here because it's against the snow, that'll give me contrast. And contrast is a good thing. Contrast is just the light against dark. So I'm taking my time. I could also move to a smaller brush. Now my bird, I'm going to make darker against the light here. And I'm checking to make sure I've got the background areas where I want things to be. Light against dark, dark against light. I'm going to have him very blue, and this will be his white underside. And I'm only doing this half that's broken by the branches and the snow. I don't have to do it all at once because I have time to go and do the second part of this. So that was kind of fun. I'm going to put some branches in here. I've just got clear water, and if I go across here with just water, it'll make a blossom that might look like branches in the background. We're looking for icy branches that'll do some kind of nifty looking things. Now he's going to be in a forest. I kind of like the clouds I'm getting there, but if you didn't want clouds, you wouldn't have to do that either. Let's see, I could even have some fun and splatter some color in there because I think it would be neat if it looks like snow. Everything we're doing now, it's still wet, so it's dissipating. I'm getting soft edges and it's moving around. No hard edges here yet because it's so wet. So wet into wet. And things will look far away and distant. And a little bit grayed out too. I've splattered a little bit in here, it won't matter. It won't matter. It doesn't matter to me. On occasion I pick it up and I mop up my overage. That also is because I don't want it to sneak back on the edges and bloom when I'm least expecting it. We could even build some branches with color. I'll put some burnt sienna lines in. This is a number 6 round brush. Oh, I didn't mean to connect those, but I did. It's just got a nice point on it. So manage this as much as you want before you let it dry. I'm going to splatter just some clear water on, just a little bit. And I'm just tapping it. If your brush doesn't splatter like you want, you can hold a brush against it and tap it. And that little abrupt action sometimes will help you splatter. I'm thinking that might be enough. I might, sometimes it's better to get in and get out and let the water do the work for you. We've also got this area under the bird to work on, so we're going to do the same treatment here. I've got a little space here, and we'll wet that area. You could just manage that one area because there's a stripe of snow here. It's a little blue, so I'm going to go back in there with a little brown, and I'm letting it mix on the paper. That gives you much more excitement than mixing it on the palette and then applying it. Look how the colors separate out and make more interesting shapes. Now I'm going to go across from the snow and make it match. If it goes behind something, it's got to come out on the other side the same way to make that background look like it goes together. So let's wet it. And we want the same kind of ice skating rink uniform wetness. That means no puddles, no dry spots. And I want to paint around the areas that I want to remain white. These snow icicles I want to be lighter. So that tells me to make something lighter, you need to put a dark next to it. So that's pretty good for now. I could lift it up and check my dry spots, and sure enough, there's a good dry spot there. But when I go back in here, I've also got that correction time. So I'm going to go, I didn't wet it past the line, I wet it up to the line. That way, when I go back in, the line is dry and will make a hard edge. Out here it's wet, it'll make a soft edge. That's the delicate tiptoeing we're doing around. And we will fill this background in. And remember that we want the darkest areas around where we want the lightest areas. That will help us show off the snow. And if you go over a line or something, will it matter? No, it won't, because icicles are all different shapes, so if you move it a little bit off of your drawing, it just won't matter a bit. You notice sometimes I put in my gray and it's bluer, then I put in my gray and it's warmer. I kind of go back and forth so I have variety in the color. One solid color all the same is a good way to make a dull painting. And that is not our goal. I'm going to sweep off a little bit of color here. And I'm going to start to analyze. Do I like what's going on? Because we are dangerously close to being done with this background. I'm going to splatter some in there because I like to splatter. I like the watercolor and the paint to look like paint at some point. I can even go back in here now because the wetness has changed. It's holding its edge as it dries, so I have a different kind of splatter. If I want some more of those branches, now would be the time to do it. If you want them to hold their edge, thicker paint will do it. I don't think I want too many of them. I don't want to take away from my bird. These lines are also directional. They are pulling your eye toward what's important. It's an abstract concept in a realistic painting. So I'm pulling you into my bird with those branches. Look, and I can erase it if I got too far. Just a little water picks it right up. And I'm kind of liking where we're headed. I'm thinking this background is about ready to let dry. A couple more splatters just because I can't stop. But I know that I probably should. So, thanks for joining me. This will be a two-part piece, and we'll come back later and it'll be a great day to paint a blue jay.